When we think about consciousness, especially in the West, we need to be able to distinguish between intelligence and consciousness, or in Sanskrit, manas and chitta. Because consciousness is far more subtle than the intellect. It's not merely the ability to comprehend what one is, or existence, or the world around it. It's not even self-awareness in any phenomenal sense, in that I can identify my hand to be my hand and not your hand. Consciousness seems far more primordial than that. Consciousness is the reflection of the clouds in the water. There is no independent agent behind it. And I think that we should disregard the argument that it's only photons which are bouncing off and appearing in your own mind, and so the cloud doesn't actually exist in the water in any real way, apart from your conception of it. And there's room for that too, but I think it's important to note that the photons which bounce off of the cloud and make contact with the water and refract in all different directions is a form of consciousness itself. And this idea of a form of consciousness, if we think of matter and form, or form and essence, we could ask, what is the form of? What is the form made of? We could say matter, but what is matter made out of? And I really like here the switching between form and essence, form and emptiness, rupa and sunyata. And if we take these two to be taiji, to be yin and yang, to be the two basic constituents of phenomenal existence, these two come from a primordial one, as we see in Plotinus, which is synonymous with the good. And that, which I think we could call rightly God, may experience itself experiencing itself experiencing itself experiencing itself. If that which its essence and form are both being, and therefore in its manifestation it is being, then that mode of being, as opposed to being, are analogous to thoughts. And these are thoughts in the mind of God, which contain the embryo of existence itself, a distinction between a subject and an object. I denote this in my own linguistics as awareness and consciousness. Awareness is the unbegotten ground, and consciousness is the only begotten Son. And this is the Logos, the ordering principle behind the universe, the active intellect, and from thence everything proceeds. But all activity of the mind is an act of intelligence, whereas consciousness is innate. Consciousness belongs more rightly to the realm of awareness than phenomenal existence. But we also must investigate the nature of consciousness. For example, I am conscious of the water. I become conscious of the water through my sensory organs. And so my consciousness of the water through my sensory organs is dependent upon the eye, dependent upon the ear, dependent upon the smell. And so the consciousness of the water is then conditioned by the water itself, because I am not conscious of the happenings of Jupiter, because the happenings of Jupiter are not being recreated in my biological organism, but that water is, because of its time-space locus. And therefore, consciousness of water, or consciousness of taste, or consciousness of thought, are all different modes of consciousness which arise interdependently with the phenomena of which they are conscious. But the consciousness in all senses is the same. These report to the common I. And it is our job to investigate who is this I. And at first we may presuppose the existence of an Atman, of an individual self, of a soul which outlasts the body beyond death. But when we investigate further, even this, whether it exists or not, is merely another aggregate subject to clinging. And we realize Anatman. There is in fact no self, because there's only ever God, en Otmovado. The only thing which exists is existence itself, which is God, for God alone exists. And all other existences are subsistences in his substance. There is no separation from him. There is no other from him. There is no he as opposed to she, or as opposed to me, or as opposed to we, or as opposed to them, or as opposed to you. There is only the experience of the experiencer experiencing the experience. The perception of the perceiver perceiving the perception. This is an act of mental cognition, which I call conception. Conceptions are born of perceptions. When you perceive something, the mental formation, the samskara that you have based upon that, the recreation of the phenomena in your intellect, in your mind, the appearance of the three-dimensional world which you find yourself enmeshed in, which does not include UV light because your biological organism has not adapted to see such things, but a frog perhaps has. This world that you see uniquely out of your eyes is a conception. And you live in a world of your own conception. And you live in a self of your own conception. And you worship a God of your own conception. Because conception is the process by which perceptions are conceived as ideas in the mind. Mental conception is a mental process. It belongs to the world of manas. And so when we refer to consciousness in the West, for example, humans are more conscious than animals, which are brute beasts, that is a false conception. Because we have higher intellect. It says nothing about consciousness, because consciousness is innate. It cannot develop. Interconnectedness of information is a mode of intellect, is a mode of the mind. It is not to do with consciousness. Consciousness is the primary datum of experience itself.